This is the summary of Project Hail Mary. Summarized by Cellwave Audio and narrated by Archie. Introduction. The story begins in darkness. A man opens his eyes, surrounded by silence, tubes, and the faint rhythm of machinery. He does not know his name, where he is, or why two lifeless bodies float beside him. There are no memories, only instinct, and the quiet dread of being utterly, cosmically alone. This is how Project Hail Mary begins, with the birth of awareness in the void. It is not only a story of survival but a profound meditation on what it means to remember, to rediscover purpose, and to choose compassion when logic alone is not enough. Andy Weir's novel takes humanity to the edge of existence, yet grounds it in the simplest human emotions: fear, curiosity, loyalty, and hope. As the protagonist, Ryland Grace, pieces together his identity, he also begins to unravel the mystery that brought him to the stars. He learns that the fate of Earth rests on his shoulders, and that his mission, both grand and tragic, was born out of desperation. But what makes Project Hail Mary unforgettable is not the scope of its science, it's the way Weir fuses intellect with intimacy. This is a book that celebrates the triumph of cooperation over chaos. When Grace meets Rocky, an alien being whose physiology and language defy human understanding, the story evolves from survival to communion. Their friendship becomes the heart of the novel, a beacon of empathy that transcends biology, culture, and species. In their shared struggle against extinction, they embody the universal truth that intelligence alone does not define life, compassion does. Weir turns science fiction into soul fiction. Every problem solved aboard the Hail Mary echoes the questions we face on Earth: how to endure isolation, how to rebuild trust, how to find meaning in duty. The novel reminds us that heroism is rarely glamorous. It's waking up in confusion and fear, yet choosing to act. It's failing 1,000 times and trying once more. It's realizing that even in the cold emptiness of space, the smallest act of kindness can alter the course of worlds. Through precise science and luminous storytelling, Project Hail Mary becomes a mirror reflecting the best and worst of humanity. It asks not what we are capable of inventing, but what we are capable of becoming when invention is all we have left. And in that question lies the heartbeat of the universe, quiet, persistent, and deeply human. Disclaimer. This expanded summary is an interpretive retelling created for educational, reflective, and literary purposes. It is not a replacement for the original work Project Hail Mary by Andy Weir, which remains the sole intellectual property of its author and publisher. This summary aims to illuminate the central ideas, characters, and emotional architecture of the story, while honoring the creative spirit of the original text. All rights to the characters, settings, scientific concepts, and narrative belong exclusively to Andy Weir and his publishing partners. This material is intended solely as a guide for readers, students, and enthusiasts seeking a deeper understanding of the novel's themes of human resilience, scientific discovery, and interstellar cooperation. Every effort has been made to preserve the integrity of Weir's message, while expanding it into a more reflective narrative form. Readers are encouraged to support the author by purchasing the original book to experience his complete storytelling vision. This summary serves not as a substitute for reading but as an invitation to think, to imagine, and to marvel at what humanity can achieve when intellect and empathy move together toward the light. Chapter 1: Awakening. He awakens to silence, thick, mechanical, and strange. A sterile hum fills the air, rhythmic but distant, as if the ship itself were breathing for him. He cannot remember his name. He cannot remember why he's here. The only clues to his existence are the steady hiss of machines, and two motionless bodies floating beside him, pale and still inside their pods. Panic flickers, a fragile spark in the vast blankness of his mind. Who are they? Who is he? The thought feels heavy, like lifting a stone underwater. He tries to move, and realizes that even his body feels foreign. Muscles tremble. Skin prickles beneath a web of medical tubes. The more he searches his memory, the emptier it feels, until fear becomes his only companion. Yet instinct takes over where memory fails. He examines the room, a chamber of sterile light and cold surfaces where screens blink with unfamiliar symbols. Somewhere deep in his subconscious, knowledge begins to whisper. He understands the meaning of the words oxygen saturation, carbon dioxide scrubber, and centrifuge. He should not know these things, but he does. Knowledge without context. Skill without self. When the automated voice begins to speak, its tone is calm, almost soothing, as though explaining to a child. Vital signs stable. Nutrient supply complete. The words settle into his fractured mind like anchors. Slowly he detaches the tubes, steadies himself, and drifts toward the control panel. His reflection in the smooth metallic surface startles him, unshaven, pale, eyes wide with disbelief. There's something both alive and ghostly about the man staring back. He tests his voice and hears it crack like a rusty hinge. "Hello?" The ship answers with the low pulse of machinery, unbothered by human fragility. In time, small fragments of understanding return. This place is not Earth. The stars visible through the narrow window are too bright, too close, too many. The silence is absolute, as though sound itself has no courage to travel that far. The man feels the edges of loneliness pressing in. He searches for the other pods again, tapping the glass, hoping for a sign of life. Nothing. The realization crawls through him like ice: he is alone. Completely, cosmically alone. But even despair cannot silence the part of him trained to solve problems. He begins to observe with purpose, examining the instruments, taking inventory, noticing patterns in the data. His hands move with confidence his mind cannot explain, pressing buttons, reading diagnostics. Somewhere, the part of him that remembers being human insists that surviving means understanding. Piece by piece he builds meaning from the chaos. The blinking labels on the screen, Hail Mary, mission status active, stir something faintly familiar, a word that resonates with faith and desperation. Hail Mary, he murmurs. A last chance. A prayer flung into the void. Sleep comes and goes in uneasy waves. Dreams are tangled with flashes of faces, voices, and laughter. A classroom. A microscope. Equations. Children's voices calling him Mr. Grace. He wakes with the taste of a name on his tongue, Ryland Grace. The name feels right, solid, like a door unlocking in the dark. With it comes a surge of awareness. He is not an astronaut by choice. He was something else before all this, something ordinary, perhaps even reluctant. And yet here he is, alone aboard a vessel light years from home. When he begins exploring deeper into the ship, he realizes its purpose goes far beyond mere survival. This is not a research station, it is a lifeboat for a dying planet. The data displays hint at catastrophe: solar dimming, energy loss, biological samples. The memory of a crisis surfaces, something about microscopic life, about the sun itself being consumed. He doesn't have the full picture yet, but one thing is certain: humanity was in trouble, and this ship was its answer. By the time he finishes his first careful inspection of the vessel, fear has been replaced by a grim determination. He still does not know how or why he was chosen, but every corner of the ship whispers responsibility. There is no one else. The dead crewmates cannot help him. The mission's success or failure now rests entirely on him, a single confused man lost among the stars. In that moment, Ryland Grace stares out through the window at the endless dark and feels the fragile pulse of purpose returning. He may not remember his past, but he understands one thing clearly: he was sent here to save something far greater than himself. And somewhere deep inside, where reason meets faith, he senses that the real journey, the one between life and meaning, has only just begun. Chapter 2: The Ghosts of Memory. Sleep is no longer rest. It's an echo chamber where fragments of a forgotten life flicker like dying stars. Ryland Grace dreams in disjointed flashes: the hum of a classroom, the chalk dust hanging in the air, a student's laughter, and a voice, his own, explaining something about molecules and light. Then he wakes again to the silence of the ship, his heart pounding, reality folding in on him. The memory fades before he can hold it, but it leaves behind a single thread: he was once a teacher. A science teacher. That realization is both comforting and devastating. Comforting because it reminds him that he was human once, devastating because it feels a lifetime away from the cold void now pressing against the hull. He begins his days, if they can be called days, by methodically exploring the ship. There's a rhythm to his movements now, a desperate kind of discipline. He studies the layout, the narrow corridors, the glowing consoles, the cryopods, the laboratory sealed behind a bulkhead door. Every surface speaks of purpose, yet every detail feels like a secret he must earn. He finds food rations, a workstation, and even a treadmill bolted to the floor. The ship was designed for human life, but clearly it was not designed for three. That knowledge cuts through him like a quiet knife. The computer greets him every time he wakes, clinical and indifferent. It answers questions when asked, but never too many at once. Crew status, he asks one day, though he already knows. 2 crew members deceased, it responds in its neutral tone. No names. No comfort. The simplicity of the words makes the truth heavier. He studies the bodies for clues: 1 man, 1 woman, faces he does not recognize but feels he should. They were his teammates. Maybe even his friends. Their stillness becomes a mirror for his isolation. In a way, they are the ghosts of the life he can't remember. Days bleed together. He spends hours at the ship's control center, deciphering data logs, trying to make sense of charts and calculations that feel both alien and familiar. It's there that his scientific instincts begin to surface. He notices references to astrophage, solar loss, and Project HAILMARY. The last term hits him again like a faint déjà vu. "Hail Mary," he whispers, as though saying it aloud might resurrect something inside him. Slowly a picture forms. Something was happening to the sun, something catastrophic, and this mission was humanity's desperate gamble. Then, in the middle of another long session of data analysis, his mind sparks. He remembers an argument. Not on this ship, but on Earth. He's standing in a sterile conference room surrounded by scientists, their faces tight with disbelief. He hears himself shouting, "They reproduce by consuming energy. It's a self-sustaining cycle." He sees a woman across the table, sharp eyes, commanding presence, listening in silence before replying, "Then we'll have to send someone to find out why Tau Ceti isn't dying." The name strikes him: Strat. The memory rushes back with force. Eva Strat, the global authority tasked with saving the world. She had power beyond governments, beyond nations. And she had chosen him. The recollection fills him with equal parts awe and regret. Why him? He wasn't a soldier or an astronaut. He was a biologist, a teacher, a man who loved theories more than risks. But Strat had seen something in him, a willingness to question what others took for granted. That trait, once the reason he was mocked in academic circles, had become humanity's last hope. Yet, as the memory fades, it leaves behind guilt like residue. He hadn't volunteered, he had been chosen. And maybe he had refused, until refusal was no longer an option. Back aboard the ship, reality reasserts itself. His oxygen levels are stable. The ship's course remains locked on a distant star. Still, the data is incomplete. Something in the mission logs is missing, as though deliberately erased. Grace begins to suspect that his amnesia might not be an accident. Perhaps he wasn't meant to remember everything, not yet. Perhaps the truth is too heavy to bear when one is alone in the dark. And yet, as he drifts through the silence, watching the stars glide past the small window, a faint calm begins to settle in him. The loneliness has edges now. It's no longer bottomless. Each recovered memory, each line of code deciphered, feels like reclaiming a piece of himself. The ghosts of his past no longer haunt, they guide. They remind him that he was once part of something vast, terrifying and noble. He turns off the ship's lights and lets the stars flood the cabin. For the first time, he whispers not to the computer, but to the void itself. "If I was sent here to save them," he says softly, "then I'd better remember how." Somewhere deep within the machinery, a sensor clicks. A new reading begins to pulse across the display. Another mystery awakens, and this time it is not from memory but from the universe itself. Chapter 3: The Message from Earth. The ship hums with a steady pulse, a rhythm that has begun to feel almost human to him, heart-like, mechanical, and constant. By now, Ryland Grace has established a fragile routine: sleep when the lights dim, eat when the hunger pangs remind him of time, and spend every waking hour unraveling the mystery coded into the ship's systems. He has learned that the Hail Mary is a vessel not of exploration, but of desperation. Humanity's last prayer whispered into the dark. Yet the details remain buried, fragmented behind password-locked files and corrupted recordings that seem to taunt him with half-remembered voices. Then one morning, if morning exists in a place where light never changes, he stumbles upon something different. Hidden within a folder labeled Briefing, Earth Archive, he finds a file with an audio signature. His fingers hesitate before he presses play. The screen flickers to life, and a woman's voice fills the cabin. Calm. Commanding. Familiar. This message is for Dr. Ryland Grace, it begins. The sound freezes him. Dr. Ryland Grace. The title stings with clarity. He was not just a teacher, he was a scientist. And this woman, her tone crisp and steady, is Eva Stratt. The recording continues. If you're hearing this, you are already en route to Tau Ceti. The situation on Earth is critical. Solar output has dropped by 13% and continues to decline. We have identified the cause, a microorganism feeding on the sun's energy. We call it astrophage. The name clicks instantly. The same word he had seen on the ship's screens, the same one buried in his fragmented memories. Stratt's voice hardens as she speaks. You were selected because you understood them better than anyone. Your work on astrophage metabolism was the foundation of this mission. You are humanity's last hope. Grace feels the words settle in his chest like lead. He wants to argue with the recording, to say he's not a hero, that he never wanted this. But the voice continues, unstoppable, clinical in its precision. Stratt explains how the astrophage reproduce by absorbing stellar energy, storing it in molecular form and migrating between stars, slowly dimming the galaxy one system at a time. Every nation on Earth united under a single mission: find the source of resistance. One star, Tau Ceti, remained untouched. The plan was to send a crew there, to study why that star's light endured when all others faded. She pauses, and her tone softens almost imperceptibly. If this message has reached you, then the others didn't make it. I'm sorry, Ryland. But you knew this was possible. You agreed to the risks. Grace swallows hard. His hands tremble. The idea that he agreed feels impossible. He remembers his fear of danger, his love of quiet teaching days, his reluctance to face conflict. But as the memory of Stratt's voice overlaps with the recording, another flash surfaces, him standing in a sterile lab signing a consent form, his voice low but steady. If I'm the only one who can model their biology, then I have to go. The recording ends abruptly, leaving him alone with the hum of the ship and the echo of a world depending on him. For the first time, the full weight of his isolation crashes down. Earth is dying. The sun is fading. Billions of lives are burning out like the stars behind him. And he is the only living human who can do anything about it. The vastness of that truth is suffocating. He closes his eyes, pressing his palms against his face, fighting the nausea that rises with realization. But then, as he steadies his breathing, the scientist within him begins to surface again, the part that finds order in chaos. He begins replaying the recording, analyzing details. Tau Ceti. Astrophage. Metabolism. Resistance. Somewhere in those words lies the answer. If he was chosen for his expertise, then that expertise is still buried within him. He only needs to awaken it. He spends hours scanning mission logs, comparing energy readings, and studying the strange patterns of light captured in the ship's sensors. The data reveals something extraordinary. Astrophage isn't merely consuming energy, it's transporting it. It travels between Venus and the Sun like a living fuel cell, storing and releasing power with terrifying efficiency. It isn't malevolent, it's simply surviving, doing what any organism would do. The realization brings an unexpected calm. Nature isn't cruel, it's indifferent. The cruelty lies only in how small humans are against it. Later, when exhaustion drags him into uneasy sleep, he dreams again. He sees Strat's eyes across the conference table. "If we fail," she says, "there won't be another chance. This is our Hail Mary." He wakes with tears he doesn't remember shedding. Sitting in the dim light of the control room, Ryland Grace stares at the endless black beyond the window. Somewhere far away, Earth still spins beneath a dimming sun. Somewhere, children still go to school, lovers still dream, and families still hope. They don't know his name. They never will. But their survival rests on his ability to remember who he was, and what he came here to do. And for the first time since awakening, he whispers into the emptiness not as a survivor, but as a scientist reclaiming his purpose. Let's get to work. Chapter 4: The Language of the Stars. The universe is supposed to be silent, cold, empty, predictable in its loneliness. But one day, as Ryland Grace sifts through endless streams of sensor data, something interrupts that silence, a rhythm faint and deliberate hidden among the cosmic background noise. It isn't random. It isn't natural. It's a signal. And for the first time since he opened his eyes aboard the Hail Mary, Grace feels something he hasn't dared to feel before: wonder. He adjusts the senses, isolating the anomaly. The data pattern repeats at precise intervals, structured, mathematical, unmistakably intentional. He listens to it again, a slow pulse echoing through the ship's speakers like the heartbeat of another intelligence. His scientific mind races. No star emits such order. No natural object speaks in repetition. Someone or something is speaking. At first he suspects it might be a reflection from his own instruments, a glitch or echo caused by the ship's systems. But when he recalibrates the spectrometer, the pattern sharpens. It's coming from somewhere outside, several million kilometers away. His heart slams against his ribs as the readings confirm it: a second spacecraft. The realization feels like stepping off the edge of reality. Another ship. Another being. Maybe another mission. Could it be from Earth? A rescue? A companion crew? Hope surges in him so powerfully that his hands shake as he initiates a proximity scan. But the readings make no sense. The object isn't following human engineering principles. It's built from materials that reflect light irregularly, its shape a web of metallic structures curving like bone and crystal combined. And it's moving with precision, adjusting its course to mirror his own. It knows he's here. He stares at the screen, half terrified, half ecstatic. His mind spins through possibilities: automated probe, alien technology, a trick of the senses, but none satisfy the logic staring back at him. This is something alive in intention, if not in form. It's trying to communicate. For a long moment he just sits there, letting the truth settle: he is not alone in this galaxy. Somewhere beyond that void, another intelligence stares back. Driven by a mix of fear and curiosity, he begins transmitting simple signals, binary pulses, then rhythmic flashes of light, the language of logic itself. The other ship responds, adjusting its pattern slightly, as if acknowledging receipt. A dialogue begins, not with words but with math. Grace finds himself smiling despite the ache in his chest. For weeks he has been the only heartbeat in an ocean of nothingness, and now the cosmos is answering back. The exchange becomes a ritual. He sends a sequence, the other responds. Simple equations at first, then primes, then ratios of elements. He realizes, with a kind of giddy awe, that the intelligence on the other end is matching his reasoning, solving, correcting, even clarifying. Whoever they are, they understand numbers the way he does. And that means they understand thought. He barely sleeps. The once terrifying silence of the ship transforms into an orchestra of purpose. Every beep of the console, every flash of return data feels like conversation. Yet beneath the exhilaration, a quiet terror grows. If they're intelligent, what do they want? Are they explorers like him? Survivors? Predators? The unknown is vast enough to swallow reason. But then again, so is loneliness, and loneliness is far deadlier. Finally, after what feels like days of exchanging signals, the alien ship begins to close the distance. Grace watches it approach, every sensor alive with readings his mind can barely comprehend. It's smaller than the HAILMARY, denser, shimmering like liquid metal frozen mid-motion. As it stabilizes a few hundred meters away, his breath catches, the structure moves. Not mechanically, but organically. It flexes as though alive, folding and unfolding panels like gills breathing in starlight. He tries to steady his nerves. Fear won't help him now. He records every reading, prepares a camera feed, and repeats his binary signal, hello. The ship responds instantly with a light pattern so intricate that it feels almost playful. For a second he laughs, an incredulous sound that breaks through the tension. The sound of another mind answering back. It's the most beautiful sound he's ever heard. Then something extraordinary happens. A small compartment opens on the alien ship's surface, releasing an object that drifts toward the HAILMARY. Grace hesitates, watching it spin slowly through space. It's spherical, metallic, glowing softly with phosphorescent energy. He catches it with a robotic arm, bringing it inside the airlock for analysis. The material is unlike anything he's ever seen, hard, warm and vibrating faintly, as if carrying a pulse. When he touches it, he feels it respond. Not violently, not threateningly, just acknowledgement. He realizes in that instant that the universe has just introduced him to his counterpart. Somewhere beyond that wall of glass a being is watching, thinking, waiting for him to reply. The idea fills him with a feeling that transcends fear or excitement. It's awe, the sacred recognition that life has found life. He leans close to the console and whispers as though speaking directly to the void, "Hello, friend." The words drift into silence, swallowed by the stars, but in his heart he knows they will not go unanswered. And for the first time since leaving Earth, Ryland Grace no longer feels like humanity's last survivor. He feels like part of something infinitely larger. Chapter 5: Contact. The alien ship drifts closer until it fills the observation window, its surface rippling like molten silver frozen mid-motion. Ryland Grace's pulse quickens. Every human instinct tells him to back away, to fear what he doesn't understand, but curiosity anchors him to the console. He watches as a smaller pod detaches from the other craft, gliding toward his airlock in a slow, deliberate arc. The movement is careful, almost respectful. Whoever or whatever is out there knows he's watching. He prepares the containment chamber. Years of instinct as a scientist overtake his fear. Decontamination fields engage, senses whir to life, and Grace monitors the object's entry. The sphere opens like an unfolding flower, releasing something into the chamber. For a moment, all he sees is movement, a shifting silhouette wrapped in a thin layer of vapor. Then it stabilizes, and he realizes with a shock that it's not a machine at all. It's a being. The creature is unlike anything his imagination could have conjured. Its body is encased in a metallic exoskeleton, segmented like the surface of a mineral. It moves with precision, balancing on several jointed limbs, each tipped with tools that resemble fingers. Where a head might be, there is a dome of translucent material pulsing faintly with amber light. Grace stares, breath shallow, as the creature taps a rhythm on the chamber wall, 3 beats, then a pause, then 3 more. Communication. It's mimicking his earlier signal. Every survival instinct tells him to retreat, but he can't. Awe overwhelms fear. This creature is intelligent, alive, curious, and for reasons beyond comprehension, It has chosen to meet him peacefully. Grace slowly mirrors the pattern with his own gloved hand. 3 taps, pause, 3 more. The alien freezes, then responds with a higher-pitched trill. It's unmistakably pleased. Somewhere between the stars, 2 minds have found a common frequency. Over the next hours, though time feels meaningless, they establish a rhythm of exchange. Grace speaks through sound, the creature answers through vibration and light. It's crude, but communication begins to take shape. He names the alien Rocky, after the metallic texture of its exoskeleton and the warmth that radiates through its gestures. Rocky, as it turns out, is as fascinated by him as he is by it. They mimic each other's motions, testing reactions, learning boundaries. Every interaction is a mixture of tension and tenderness, a slow dance between fear and trust. Grace realizes quickly that Rocky cannot survive in his atmosphere. The alien thrives in an environment rich with ammonia and pressure far higher than Earth's. Communication then becomes a series of careful exchanges through glass and speaker, with translated vibrations bridging the gulf between them. Despite the barrier, Grace senses personality in the rhythm of Rocky's tones, impatience when data is slow, humor when Grace misinterprets a signal, even a kind of pride when he deciphers one correctly. It's like talking to a scientist made of light and stone. Through their exchanges, a revelation surfaces. Rocky's people face the same catastrophe. His star, Eridani 40, is dying, dimming under the same parasitic organism, astrophage. His mission mirrors Grace's in purpose and urgency. They are both survivors of civilizations gasping for light. That shared struggle becomes their bond. For the first time, Grace understands the depth of the term Hail Mary. It was never just a mission, it was a plea from 2 worlds whispered into the same void. They begin comparing data. Rocky's ship is built for engineering, not biology. Grace provides the scientific insight, Rocky brings mechanical brilliance. The 2 complement each other like different halves of one mind. Through gestures and improvised mathematics, they build a shared understanding of the astrophage's behavior. Grace finds joy in the rhythm of collaboration, the thrill of a lab reborn in space. The isolation that once gnawed at him fades into something profound, companionship. At night, when Grace drifts to sleep, he thinks of the irony. Humanity's greatest discovery didn't come from war or conquest, but from necessity, and the courage to listen instead of fear. 2 species bound by extinction, learning to speak through numbers and light. When he wakes, the ship hums differently. The silence no longer feels heavy. Somewhere beyond the hull, Rocky works tirelessly, his faint vibrations resonating through the metal frame like the steady heartbeat of a friend. In a universe vast enough to swallow civilizations whole, 2 unlikely beings have found the simplest form of salvation, understanding. And as Grace gazes out at the stars, he realizes something profound. Saving humanity might not mean saving himself. But in Rocky, he has already rediscovered what it means to be alive. Chapter 6: The Science of Survival. The silence of the ship no longer feels suffocating. Now it hums with the rhythm of work, of discovery, of shared purpose. Ryland Grace wakes each day to the faint vibrations coming through the hull, Rocky's way of saying I'm here. The 2 have developed a system of communication that grows richer with each passing cycle. Tones and patterns for objects, rhythm for concepts, and light pulses for emotions that words can't capture. The alien's brilliance lies in engineering, while Grace's strength lies in life itself. Together, they form something neither species could have achieved alone. Their mission takes on new meaning. They are not just explorers or survivors, they are scientists at the edge of creation, trying to decode the universe's cruelest mystery. The astrophage, that microscopic thief of sunlight, has reduced both their civilizations to desperation. But now, in the endless quiet of space, Grace and Rocky begin to fight back with the only weapon they have, curiosity. They establish a makeshift laboratory between their ships, separated by thick glass but united by purpose. The airlock becomes a shared workspace, a border between 2 atmospheres and 2 species. Grace transfers samples of astrophage through sealed chambers, while Rocky builds instruments from alien alloys, devices that hum with energy and precision unlike anything made on Earth. Every experiment is a conversation between biology and engineering, between intuition and logic. The first breakthrough comes unexpectedly. As Grace observes a captured astrophage colony under magnification, he notices a strange fluctuation. The organisms pulse in rhythm, absorbing and releasing energy in perfect synchrony. It's beautiful, almost hypnotic, until he realizes what it means. They are not acting as individuals but as a collective, a living system governed by light and heat. They're not mindless parasites. They're efficient energy engines, life redesigned by evolution to thrive where everything else dies. He transmits his findings to Rocky, who responds with a flurry of excited vibrations. The alien's equivalent of laughter fills the cabin, a metallic trill that makes Grace grin. Rocky begins constructing containment fields to test different environmental reactions. Together, they expose the astrophage to variables: pressure, radiation, temperature shifts. Each test brings them closer to understanding what fuels these creatures and what might stop them. In time, they identify a clue. The astrophage die in specific frequencies of light, but only under particular atmospheric conditions. It's not a weakness, it's a balance. Somewhere out there, a natural predator might exist. The idea seems absurd, but evolution always finds an answer. Grace begins scanning the local system for anomalies, planets or asteroids that emit strange readings. Rocky, with his unmatched engineering mind, recalibrates sensors beyond anything human technology could achieve. Weeks pass in this rhythm of hope and exhaustion. Grace loses track of time, measuring life only by discoveries. The friendship between him and Rocky deepens into something beyond language. They share jokes in broken code, gestures of gratitude, and the quiet companionship of two beings too stubborn to surrender. When Grace accidentally spills a sample and nearly contaminates his lab, Rocky's frantic clanging on the other side of the glass is almost paternal. It's a reminder that even in space, fear and care are universal languages. Then comes the day they both sense it, the signal they've been searching for. A small moon orbiting the star Tau Ceti emits irregular thermal patterns, inconsistent with its size and composition. The readings match none of their models. Something on that moon is consuming astrophage energy and thriving. Grace's heart races as he analyzes the data. A predator, he murmurs. Life that feeds on the feeder. Rocky's reply comes through the translator in broken English syllables they've built together. Maybe, savior. The word hangs in the air between them, fragile and beautiful. For the first time they both see the faintest possibility of redemption, not just for themselves but for their worlds. They set a course for the moon immediately, their two ships moving in tandem through the void. Grace watches Rocky's vessel glide beside his like a silver shadow, the alien's movements confident and graceful. He feels a strange kinship that transcends species. Two beings born of different suns, united by the same desperate hope. As the moon's pale light begins to reflect against their hulls, Grace feels something shift inside him. The fear that once defined his journey dissolves into purpose. He no longer feels like the last human alive. He feels like a scientist again, one standing on the threshold of discovery, guided not by fear of death but by reverence for life. And as their ships descend toward the mysterious world below, Grace whispers to himself, half in prayer and half in awe, "We're not just trying to survive. We're trying to understand." Chapter 7: The Moon of Life. The descent toward the moon feels like entering a secret kept by the universe. The gray sphere grows larger on the display, bathed in the distant light of Tau Ceti. Every surface glimmers with faint streaks of silver, and beneath those scars lies something alive, a pattern of energy unlike anything Grace or Rocky has seen before. As their ships approach, Grace can almost feel the pulse of it through the hull, a quiet rhythm that whispers of motion, of hunger, of life. They land side by side on the barren surface, tethered by proximity and purpose. The landscape stretches into a pale horizon, flat except for jagged ridges that gleam like glass. Grace's instruments go wild with readings, unusual radiation signatures, shifting thermal fluctuations and traces of molecular activity beneath the surface. The air, though thin and hostile, carries faint bioluminescence, flickering in waves that mimic the astrophage's energy pattern. It's as if the very soil hums with microscopic life. Rocky's voice vibrates through the communicator. Strange, a live moon, he clicks in their hybrid tongue. Grace nods, though Rocky cannot see it. Yeah. Alive and dangerous, probably. There's fear in his voice, but also fascination. Both of them know what's at stake. If this place holds a natural predator to the astrophage, it could save their worlds. If it doesn't, their mission ends here, buried beneath alien dust. They begin testing immediately. Grace deploys probes into the soil, while Rocky builds containment units to withstand both their atmospheres. The work is slow, delicate, and terrifying. Every movement feels like dissecting a miracle. After hours of careful sampling, the results come through, and they are staggering. Under microscopic observation, the samples reveal a new organism, translucent, fluid, and alive. It moves with purpose, consuming the astrophage cultures Grace introduces. Within minutes, the predator cells multiply exponentially, devouring the energy-rich particles and leaving behind inert residue. Grace watches, wide-eyed, as the astrophage, once unstoppable, are undone by nature's balance. "You beautiful little killer," he whispers. They name it Taumoeba, a hybrid of Tau Ceti and amoeba. It's elegant and terrifying, a microscopic savior birthed from cosmic coincidence. Grace's scientific mind races through implications. If Taumoeba can survive in controlled conditions, it could be introduced to their home stars, eradicating the astrophage threat. But the problem is enormous. Taumoeba thrives only within narrow environmental limits. The temperatures and pressures that keep it alive would destroy it in space. It's the right weapon in the wrong world. Rocky's response is immediate and practical. Change environment. Change Taumoeba. His tone is matter-of-fact, like a craftsman suggesting a repair. Grace almost laughs. "You want me to evolve it by hand?" But as absurd as it sounds, he knows Rocky is right. Life adapts. With enough time, pressure, and controlled mutation, they might be able to breed a strain that can survive near the sun or Rocky's star. Days turn into cycles of trial and error. Grace exposes the Taumoeba to variations of heat, radiation, and pressure. Most die instantly, bursting like glass bubbles in a storm. But a few endure a little longer, clinging to existence with stubborn defiance. Each failure brings data. Each survivor brings hope. Rocky engineers more advanced containment chambers, adjusting for microgravity and cross-species contamination. The two work tirelessly, their friendship deepening in the crucible of shared obsession. At night, Grace finds himself talking aloud through the comms, even when Rocky has gone silent to rest. He talks about Earth, about oceans and laughter, about the smell of rain. Rocky listens, sometimes clicking softly in acknowledgement. In return, Rocky describes his home, an underground world of metal caverns, constant heat, and a sky his people have never seen. Their lives are opposites, yet their hearts beat in rhythm. Two civilizations that would have feared each other under normal circumstances have found kinship in desperation. Weeks pass, and the experiments begin to show promise. A strain of Taumoeba withstands increasing levels of radiation. Grace's excitement is uncontainable. "We're close, Rocky." "Really close," he shouts through the channel. Rocky's reply trembles with emotion. "Save both worlds. We are smart." The alien's confidence humbles him. For the first time, Grace begins to see this partnership not as a coincidence but as destiny, a cosmic collaboration written into the fabric of survival. But progress comes with danger. During one experiment, a containment breach nearly releases the Taumoeba into the ship's air system. The alarm scream, lights flash, and Grace's heart stops. He seals the chamber in seconds, his hands trembling. Rocky's frantic vibrations shake the hull as he calls out, "You safe?" Grace laughs breathlessly, still panting. Barely. The moment leaves them shaken but alive, a reminder that the thin line between genius and disaster is often invisible until it's crossed. Later, as Grace stares out at the strange moon glowing beneath Tausetti's light, he realizes how far he's come from the terrified man who woke up alone in the void. He's no longer a survivor, stumbling through the wreckage of memory. He's a scientist, a partner, a friend. The mission is no longer just about saving Earth. It's about honoring the fragile miracle of connection that made survival possible. And when Rocky hums through the communicator, his tone soft and almost musical, Grace feels the weight of his own humanity settle gently in his chest. The stars no longer look indifferent. They look alive. Chapter 8: The Edge of Extinction. For the first time since either of them began this desperate journey, there is light at the end of the darkness, literal and metaphorical. The mutated strain of Taumoeba they have bred is showing promise. It survives longer in extreme radiation, reproduces rapidly, and most importantly, devours astrophage at a rate neither of them thought possible. Ryland, Grace and Rocky are elated. Against every law of probability, two beings from two stars have managed to outwit extinction. But in the universe, every discovery carries a cost. Grace documents each development meticulously, sending data to the ship's archive and adjusting the environmental parameters. Rocky monitors containment integrity, his rhythmic vibrations echoing through the metal walls like a song of focus. Days blur into nights, if such things exist out here, and exhaustion becomes irrelevant. They have one goal: create a Taumoeba strain that can survive the journey home and end the plague devouring their stars. It happens quietly at first. A flicker on the screen. A reading that doesn't match the last. Grace frowns and rechecks the senses. The Taumoeba colonies are multiplying too quickly, exponentially faster than expected. That can't be right, he murmurs. He isolates one chamber, and within minutes the organisms double in density. Rocky notices the spike too. Something wrong, his translated voice clicks through the speaker. Grow too fast. Energy wrong. They run tests and the results freeze Grace's blood. The new strain, instead of dying under solar exposure, has become hyper-efficient. It doesn't just survive in energy-rich environments. It thrives uncontrollably, converting everything it touches into fuel. What was once a savior now threatens to become a new apocalypse. We made a monster, Grace whispers, staring at the screen. A perfect one. Panic turns to calculation. They begin emergency containment procedures, isolating the sample and purging the compromised chambers. The ship vibrates with alarms, a chorus of warning lights painting the walls red. Rocky seals off his section of the workspace, his movements sharp and efficient. Grace's hands shake as he reprograms the filtration system to sterilize the airlock. For a few minutes, the nightmare feels under control. But then the system crashes. A single containment unit breaches. The Taumoeba spill into the isolation chamber, feeding on residual astrophage in the equipment. Grace's mind races. If they reach the propulsion tanks, they could consume the entire ship's energy reserve. Rocky, he yells, we have to vent the lab. Rocky doesn't hesitate. Within seconds, both ships coordinate a synchronized release. The lab doors open to the vacuum of space, sucking the contaminated air into nothingness. The silence that follows is absolute. They wait in stillness, both trembling in their own ways. Grace stares at the monitor, heart hammering, until the readings drop back to 0. The immediate threat is gone, but so is nearly half their progress. Months of careful cultivation lost in seconds. We got too close, he murmurs. Rocky's reply hums with quiet steadiness. We learn. We fix. That night, if it can be called that, Grace lies in his bunk unable to sleep. The ship feels smaller than ever, the air heavier. The taste of failure lingers like ash. For the first time, he wonders if they were ever meant to succeed. Maybe life itself resists salvation. Maybe the universe balances survival with sacrifice, ensuring that no solution comes without consequence. But then he remembers Rocky's words, simple, unwavering: we learn. We fix. It's not hope in the sentimental sense, it's persistence. The kind of courage born from necessity. The next day they start again, but with caution this time: sterile protocols, redundant seals, separate growth chambers. Grace modifies the genetic matrix of the Taumoeba to slow its replication rate. Rocky redesigns containment units to withstand any failure, building from metals unknown to human science. They become partners not only in intellect but in faith, the faith that trial and error is not defeat but progress. Their efforts slowly pay off. The new strain stabilizes. It consumes astrophage efficiently without exponential growth, thriving within controlled parameters. Grace tests its endurance in conditions simulating solar proximity, and it lives barely but long enough to matter. The discovery reignites a flicker of triumph. "This is it," he says aloud. "This one can do it." Rocky's response is immediate: "Then we save worlds." But the triumph is bittersweet. The incident has reminded them how fragile victory can be. As Grace watches the stars drift by, he realizes that survival isn't about conquest, it's about balance. Nature doesn't reward brilliance, it rewards adaptability. And sometimes, even the smallest success demands everything you have left to give. He closes his eyes, listening to the low hum of Rocky's ship beside his. The alien's steady rhythm has become a comfort, a heartbeat against the infinite quiet. Together, they have crossed the line between failure and redemption more than once. And though the danger remains, so does their bond, unbreakable, improbable, and utterly human in spirit. For now, that's enough. The stars still shine. The Taumoeba live. And in the dark between worlds, two friends continue their work, not because it's safe, but because it must be done. Chapter 9: The Cost of Light. The discovery should have felt like triumph. After months of uncertainty and near disaster, the new strain of Taumoeba works. It consumes astrophage at a steady rate, replicates within controllable limits, and survives the intense radiation that once obliterated every other sample. Ryland, Grace, and Rocky have done the impossible. They've created life that can restore dying stars. Yet, as the numbers stabilize and the screens blink with confirmation, Grace feels no victory, only a heavy, sinking silence. He understands what these results mean, and what they will eventually demand of him. When they first embarked on this mission, both believed their goal was simple: find the cure, take it home, save their worlds. But space doesn't deal in simplicity. The data reveal a devastating truth. Their stars are too far apart, their planets too fragile, and their vessels too limited in capacity. The HAILMARY carries enough containment units for only one successful return. One dose. One civilization saved. And even that will take all the energy and resources left between them. Grace stares at the numbers until they blur. He tries to find a loophole, a variable he might have missed. But the science is merciless. He knows what it means, long before Rocky says it aloud in their halting, patched-together language. "Not enough," Rocky clicks softly. "My people or your people. One lives." The words fall like a verdict. The silence that follows is unbearable. Grace looks out at the stars and thinks of the world he left behind, the oceans, the laughter of his students, the simple warmth of sunlight. He imagines Earth as it is now, dimmed, shivering beneath a fading sun. He sees faces of people he will never meet, families he will never save. And across the glass he sees Rocky, his friend, his partner, staring back with eyes that glow faintly in the dark. Both of them carry worlds in their hearts. Both of them are doomed to fail at mercy. He spends days running simulations, desperate to find another way. If they could split the supply, maybe both stars could recover slowly. But the data refuses him at every turn. The energy loss, the transport degradation, the mutation rate, all conspire against hope. The solution is binary. One lives or none do. When he finally admits it aloud, his voice cracks. "I can't choose, Rocky. The alien's reply hums softly through the hull. You can. You must. It isn't cold or cruel. It's logical, the way an engineer speaks about a failing bridge. But Grace hears the sadness beneath it, the acceptance of a being who has already made peace with dying for his people. I send you back, Rocky adds simply. Humanity lives. Grace shakes his head violently. No. I can't let you, he stops. The argument is useless. Rocky's ship doesn't have the capacity to store the necessary fuel and containment chambers for the journey home. His physiology makes long-term stasis impossible. He can't survive the trip to Earth. Grace knows all of this. But knowing and accepting are different things. He begins making plans in secret. Late at night, when Rocky rests, he recalculates trajectories, power consumption, and fuel distribution. If he diverts energy from the HAILMARY's propulsion system and modifies the containment fields, he might be able to send a smaller vessel back to Eridani 40 with the Taumoeba sample intact. It would mean sacrificing his own return, running the ship dry, stranding himself in orbit around Tau Ceti. The thought terrifies him, but the logic feels inevitable. He's done the math. One life for billions. That's the cost of light. When Rocky discovers his plan, their confrontation is raw and wordless. You die, Rocky says simply. Grace tries to smile. Somebody has to make it home. The alien's limbs clatter in agitation, his light pulsing erratically. No. You, my friend. We both live. But Grace knows better. There is no both. There is only one. They argue in half words and silences, their languages breaking under the weight of what they cannot say. Eventually, the argument ends not in anger but in stillness. Rocky lowers his body against the glass that separates them, and Grace does the same. Two shapes, two species separated by atmosphere but joined by something that transcends even biology. For a long moment they simply exist there, quiet, resigned, and deeply human in their shared grief. That night, Grace writes a message to Earth. He doesn't know if it will ever reach them, but he records it anyway, his voice steady despite the ache in his chest. He tells them the truth, not just about the mission but about what he learned out here. About courage, friendship, and the fragile miracle of connection. He ends the message simply, we weren't alone in the universe. And we weren't the only ones worth saving. As he finishes the recording, the ship's systems dim slightly, the final adjustments for the transfer sequence complete. Outside, Tau Ceti burns faintly, waiting for its deliverance. In a few hours, he will make the decision official. Rocky's people will live. His own will fade from his sight but not from his heart. He lies back in the captain's chair, eyes heavy, and whispers to the stars, if there's any mercy left in the universe, let him make it home. Then he closes his eyes and waits for the light. Chapter 10: The Final Transmission. The decision, once made, becomes its own gravity, pulling everything toward it. There's no turning back now. Ryland Grace has spent sleepless cycles perfecting the logistics of his sacrifice, refining every variable until even the universe can't argue with the math. He has reprogrammed the HAILMARY's navigation systems, rerouted energy from the auxiliary reactors, and sealed his research logs so that both species, human and Iridian, will benefit from the data if it ever reaches them. Every movement feels precise, deliberate, inevitable. Rocky hasn't spoken in hours. The alien's usual rhythm, the tapping, the hum of work, the mechanical clatter of his movements, is gone. Only silence pulses through the ship, heavy and suffocating. Grace knows what that silence means: resistance, grief, maybe even anger. But Rocky will understand. He always does. Grace initiates the final transmission sequence to Earth. He sets the recording device to capture video this time. His reflection on the screen startles him, thinner now, his face worn and eyes shadowed by exhaustion. He looks like a ghost of the man who once taught children about molecules and starlight. Still, he forces a smile, the kind of smile a teacher gives before the hardest lesson. "Hello, Earth," he begins. His voice trembles but steadies as he continues. If this message reaches you, it means the Hail Mary completed its mission. We found the solution. A life form we call Taumoeba. It consumes astrophage safely and naturally. It works. He pauses, his throat tightening. But it also means I didn't make it home. He leans closer to the camera. Don't be sad. This was always a one-way trip. I just didn't know it at first. But I did my part. And I wasn't alone. He glances toward the sealed bulkhead, where Rocky is working silently. There's another species out here, intelligent, kind, brave. They were dying too. We helped each other. I need you to know that humanity wasn't the only civilization worth saving. We shared the sky with someone beautiful. He hesitates before ending the message, searching for the right words to carry across the light years. Tell my students, tell them I wasn't afraid. That I kept solving problems until the very end. That science isn't just about knowledge, it's about compassion. About seeing connection in the chaos. His voice softens to a whisper. And if you look up at the stars tonight, know this, we weren't the first to wonder if we were alone. And now, we never will be again. He presses send, and the transmission begins its impossible journey across the void, carrying the weight of one man's final testament. For a long time Grace just sits there, watching the blinking light that marks the message's departure. The silence afterward feels sacred, like a prayer completed. Then he turns to the final phase of his plan. The Taumoeba samples have been safely transferred to Rocky's containment system. Grace double-checks the seals, the propulsion balance, the navigation logs. Every step is flawless. Rocky's smaller ship will depart with enough fuel to return to Eridani 40. His people will live. The rest, his fate, no longer matters. He opens the communication channel one last time. Rocky, he says softly. The alien turns, his dome flickering with pale light. It's ready. Rocky vibrates slowly, his tones lower than usual. You sure, Grace? Grace nods. Yeah. This is the right call. Rocky hesitates, then presses his metallic limbs against the glass barrier that separates them. Grace mirrors the gesture, palm to limb, skin to metal. It's not a handshake, not a goodbye, it's something purer. A connection that language could never explain. I fix your ship, Rocky says after a moment, his tone trembling. You sleep. You live. Grace laughs softly. You can't fix what's already decided. Rocky shakes his head. Friend. Always fix. The words hit him harder than he expects. He feels the ache rise in his chest, a mix of gratitude and sorrow too vast to name. Go save your people, Rocky. That's the job. That's what friends do. The alien's ship detaches with a slow, almost mournful grace. Through the viewport, Grace watches it drift away, the hull shimmering like a living diamond. The stars catch its surface, scattering light in all directions. It looks less like a vessel and more like a promise, the proof that life can find friendship even in infinite night. Grace remains at his console, monitoring the launch until Rocky's craft disappears into the distance. Then he turns off the lights in the Hail Mary. The darkness feels right. He lies back in his chair and whispers, "Mission complete." Outside, Tau Ceti burns faintly brighter, a fragile sunrise in an endless sky. For the first time since he left Earth, Grace feels no fear, only peace. He closes his eyes, the hum of the engines fading into the steady rhythm of his heartbeat. Somewhere far away, two stars will shine again because two strangers chose compassion over survival. And in the stillness, Ryland Grace lets go, not in despair but in gratitude. Chapter 11, Resurrection. Ryland Grace thought he would die there, alone in the dark, content that at least one world would live. But fate, as it turns out, had other plans. Consciousness returns slowly, like light seeping under a closed door. His body aches, his throat burns, and every muscle screams from disuse. The hum around him is different now, softer, warmer. He opens his eyes expecting stars. Instead he sees color. Orange light filters through translucent walls, refracted in hues that pulse like living amber. For a moment, he wonders if this is death. Then he hears it, the unmistakable rhythm of clicking vibrations. Familiar. Comforting. Alive. Grace, wake, a sound says, fragmented but real. His vision clears, and the impossible truth takes shape before him. Rocky. The alien stands beside him, his crystalline limbs glinting under bioluminescent light. His dome glows faintly, his tone reverberating through the chamber. Grace live. Good. Grace not die. Grace tries to sit up but his strength fails. He blinks in disbelief. Rocky. His voice cracks. You made it? You, what happened? The alien emits a sound halfway between laughter and static. You sleep long time. I fix you. Fix ship. Bring you home. Not your home, mine. Grace stares, mind reeling. He should have died when the Hail Mary's energy reserves depleted. But Rocky must have found a way. Rerouted power, reinforced life support, kept him alive during the voyage back to Eridani 40. The thought is staggering. You saved me, he whispers. Rocky tilts his head. We friends? Friends save? Grace laughs weakly, a sound that quickly turns to tears. He looks around. The chamber is vast and alien, filled with structures that resemble coral and metal interwoven. The air is thick but breathable, adapted for him through some impossible engineering. Through the translucent walls he glimpses the faint glow of a world unlike any he has ever imagined, a planet bathed in golden haze, where rivers of molten light flow beneath crystalline surfaces. The architecture is alive, shifting subtly as if breathing with the planet itself. Erid, Rocky says proudly. My world. Grace stares in awe. You brought me here. Yes, Rocky clicks. You, my friend. You save my people. I save you. The weight of those words crushes him with tenderness. He remembers the day he said goodbye, believing it was forever. And now here they are, two survivors of different suns, standing together in the light of a world reborn. He tries to thank Rocky but language fails. So he simply presses his hand against the transparent barrier, and Rocky mirrors the gesture. It's enough. Time passes and Grace regains his strength. He learns to live among the Iridians, creatures of logic and empathy, whose lives are governed by rhythm and resonance rather than speech and chaos. They study him as he studies them, not as a specimen, but as a friend who carries stories from another world. They create a habitat tailored to his needs, a sanctuary glowing softly under artificial sunlight. He teaches them biology. They teach him engineering that defies human comprehension. In this exchange he finds a new kind of purpose. At night, when he lies under the warm orange light, he dreams of Earth. He wonders if humanity survived, if the Tamoeba truly restored the sun, if his final transmission reached them. He imagines his students grown, their children playing beneath blue skies bright again. The thought brings peace. He knows he will never see his world again, but he doesn't need to. His work, his sacrifice, and his friendship have already crossed the void. Sometimes, when the light outside dims, he and Rocky sit together in silence. They don't need words anymore. The hum of their shared existence is its own language. Two beings from opposite corners of the galaxy, bound not by circumstance but by choice. Grace smiles as he looks out at the horizon of molten gold. You know, he says softly, I thought I was sent to save the world. Turns out, I just had to save a friend. Rocky clicks a response, simple and perfect. Both same thing. And as the stars above Erid shimmer like the ghosts of forgotten suns, Ryland Grace finally feels what he'd been searching for all along, not home, not victory, but belonging. Chapter 12: The Long Light. Time passes differently on Erid. There are no sunsets or sunrises here, only a steady glow that pulses like the rhythm of a heart. Ryland Grace has long stopped counting days. The cycles blend into a seamless stretch of discovery and quiet joy, a life rebuilt from the debris of sacrifice. Sometimes he still wakes startled, expecting the hum of the Hail Mary or the empty silence of space. But instead, there's always the soft vibration of Rocky's voice, and the gentle shimmer of alien light filling the chamber. He has become part of this world now. The Iridians visit often, communicating in vibrations he's learned to interpret through sound and rhythm. They are a species of harmony, literal harmony, every message wrapped in a cadence of meaning. They treat him not as an outsider but as a hero, the human who crossed galaxies to help save their star. Grace always laughs at the irony. He wasn't trying to be a hero. He was just trying to make things right. He continues his research here, because curiosity is the one instinct he's never lost. Together with Rocky, he studies the stabilized Taumoeba, now thriving in controlled colonies that maintain the delicate balance of Erid's atmosphere. The organism that once threatened to devour the galaxy has become the lifeline of two civilizations. Rocky's people have perfected containment. Grace helps them refine its biology, preventing mutation. Between them, they've built the greatest laboratory the universe has ever known. And yet, even amidst his fulfillment, Grace carries ghosts. He often finds himself gazing up at the translucent dome that shields their habitat, wondering about Earth. Did the sun recover? Did humanity survive long enough to hear his final message? He'll never know, but he likes to think someone did. Maybe a scientist, decades from now, will decode his transmissions and whisper his name with gratitude. Maybe some student, inspired by his story, will look up at the stars and feel less alone. That thought is enough to keep him smiling. One day, as he and Rocky observe a new generation of Taumoeba drifting in the nutrient tanks, Rocky hums a familiar pattern, one Grace hasn't heard in years. "You think about home," the translation unit whispers. Grace nods. "Yeah. Sometimes." "Do you?" Rocky's lights flicker with amusement. "I home. You home too?" Grace feels tears prick at his eyes. "Yeah," he says softly. "I guess I am." They sit together, their shadows stretching across the lab floor. In the soft orange light, Grace realizes that home was never a place, it was a connection, a shared heartbeat across the impossible distance of two stars. He once believed heroism was measured by success or sacrifice. Now he understands it's measured by love, the stubborn, unyielding kind that refuses to die even in the cold of space. As time wears on, his body begins to slow. He feels it in small ways, the ache in his hands, the heaviness in his steps, the long pauses his breath takes before catching rhythm again. The Iridians notice, and so does Rocky. They try to ease his days with comfort, music made of vibration, warmth made of light. When words no longer come easily, Rocky simply sits with him, humming softly, the same way Grace once hummed to himself aboard the Hail Mary. In his final days, Grace records one last message, not for Earth but for anyone who might find it. His voice, weathered and calm, fills the lab. "If you're hearing this, then life has already done what it always does, adapted. You might not know me, and you don't have to. Just know this, we were never meant to conquer the stars. We were meant to meet them halfway." He pauses, a faint smile curling on his lips. "And when you do, you'll realize the same thing I did, that survival isn't the greatest victory. Understanding is." He ends the recording and leans back, his eyes drifting to the endless shimmer of light outside. Rocky stands beside him, silent, his luminous dome flickering like a heartbeat. Grace reaches out a trembling hand, pressing it against the barrier one last time. Rocky mirrors it instantly. No words. Just gratitude. The room grows quiet, filled with a warmth that doesn't belong to any one star. The glow dims slowly, gently, as though the universe itself is taking a breath. When Ryland Grace finally closes his eyes, it isn't the darkness of space that greets him, it's the soft orange dawn of a world that loved him back. Project Hail Mary reminds us that the greatest discoveries aren't found in equations or distant galaxies, they're found in empathy. In the courage to trust, to listen and to give, even when no one is watching. Andy Weir's story, beneath all its science and wonder, is a love letter to the human spirit, to our relentless, hopeful need to reach out into the unknown and find a hand reaching back. This has been the summary of Project Hail Mary. Summarized by Cellwave Audio and narrated by Archie.